Ah, yes. Hello. Stewie Griffin here. Infant. Genius. The only person in this room who can read a balance sheet and pronounce macroeconomics without crying. Today's subject is not world domination, although frankly this might be related, but something far more impressive in its scale of incompetence. As of January 3rd, 2026, the total United States national debt stands at approximately $38.5 trillion. Trillion. With a T! As in, that's too much. To put that in perspective, if you stacked $1 bills, you wouldn't just reach the moon, you'd overshoot it, panic, and ask Congress for more funding. Now, let's begin this documentary properly, because the adults clearly haven't... What is the national debt? The national debt is the total amount of money the U.S. federal government owes. It's accumulated over decades by spending more than it collects in revenue year after year, like a grown adult who keeps buying yachts on a credit card and calls it stimulus. When the government spends more than it earns through taxes, it runs a deficit. Do that once? Fine. Do that every year since the late 20th century? Congratulations. You've unlocked $38.5 trillion in debt and a permanent look of concern. This debt is funded by borrowing mostly through U.S. Treasury securities. These are bought by investors, pension funds, banks, foreign governments, and, occasionally, by people who enjoy watching the world burn. Yes, foreign countries own a portion of U.S. debt. No, that does not mean China can repossess Florida, though frankly, they might return it. How did it get this bad? Short answer: war, tax cuts, entitlement spending, recessions, pandemics, and a deep emotional fear of saying no. Infractions, ambivalence. Long answer? Buckle up. Over time, the U.S. government committed to massive programs: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense spending, and interest on existing debt. These are called mandatory expenditures, which is government speak for, we promised this and now it's awkward. Then came repeated tax cuts, often without matching spending reductions. Economists warned about deficits. Politicians nodded politely and continued anyway, because elections are temporary and debt is apparently eternal. Add in the 2008 financial crisis, COVID-19, pandemic, stimulus, rising interest rates, aging population, and voila. A debt so large it requires graphs to emotionally process. Why not just pay it off? Ah, that question. So innocent, so naive, so very childlike. The U.S. does not plan to pay off the debt in the way you pay off a credit card. Instead, it rolls it over, borrowing new money to pay old obligations, while hoping economic growth outruns interest costs. This works until it doesn't. As debt grows, interest payments grow. And interest is the most unforgiving expense of all. It provides nothing, builds nothing, and politely siphons money from the budget like a vampire in a suit. By the mid-2022s, interest payments alone became one of the largest federal expenses, competing with defense and healthcare. Imagine working full-time just to pay interest on your own bad decisions. Now imagine doing it with 330 million people watching. Is this actually dangerous? Here's where economists begin sweating. The U.S. has advantages. It controls its own currency. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. Treasury bonds are still considered safe. This gives the U.S. more flexibility than most countries. But flexibility is not immunity. High debt can crowd out private investment, limit future crisis response, increase inflation risk, force painful tax hikes or spending cuts. And if confidence in U.S. debt ever seriously erodes, interest rates spike, budgets implode. Politicians discover the word austerity which they hate almost as much as math. Who is responsible? Everyone, and therefore, no one. Politicians blame previous administrations. Voters demand services without taxes. Markets reward short-term growth. Economists argue in footnotes while Rome burns. The system incentivizes delay. Fixing debt is painful now and beneficial later. And later, inconveniently, is someone else's term. So instead, we get speeches and commissions and bipartisan concern right before election season. What happens next? Realistically, the debt continues to grow. Unless there is major tax reform, spending restraint, entitlement, restructuring, or sustained economic growth. And each of those options is politically radioactive. So the most likely outcome is gradual adjustment, periodic panic, and documentaries like this one explaining to future generations how we knew and still did nothing. A genius baby's final thought. The U.S. National debt is not an apocalypse, but it is a warning. It tells a story of a powerful nation that mastered innovation, growth, and influence, yet struggled with long-term discipline. Debt is not evil. Ignoring it is, and if an infant can understand that, well, perhaps the adults should stop arguing about who's right and start asking who's paying. Because eventually, someone always does. Now watch me play my favorite game, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel